Good morning, everybody. As was just said by Mylène Petit, this trial was conducted within the Sanitrans consortium that brings together a number of partners, which I'm not going to quote because you see them on the screen. Introduction. Transporting pigs is one of the main risks of disseminating diseases between countries, regions and breeding farms. It is regulated in France and in the European Union. It is mandatory to clean and disinfect the lorry after each transport session. And in France, we have an additional obligation. A visual control is compulsory after the lorry has been cleaned. The control methods used today are basically visual control and microbial control, but there is no real efficacy method to determine how cleaning and disinfection should be conducted on viruses. But you will understand, as I do, that some viruses, including the African swine fever, can be of interest, and influenza, etc. So the objective, the aim of the study was to assess the different methods to control the efficacy of cleaning and disinfection operations. We need methods that are quick, reliable, not too expensive, and efficacious towards viruses. For materials and methods, we took samples from 30 lorries following cleaning and disinfection. These lorries belong to 5 whole-year companies. The samples were taken in 3 slaughterhouses in 5 days, 10 sampling sites, 2 on the floor, 2 on the lateral walls in the inside of the lorry, 2 on the separation walls, 2 on the roof, the loading ramp, and an external wall. We compared 6 control methods. The samples were, for all 6 methods, were juxtaposed for each method because we could not do them in the same place every time the surface was standardized. The compared methods were the contact dish. We counted the total flora. There was a residual ATP measurement conducted with an ATP meter. We used a GLB biocontrol. We detected protein residues thanks to a system where colorimetry was conducted on a brush. Visual score was given for cleanliness, determined by Ifip, and finally biofilm detection was carried out by a Belgian company, Rialco. It is colored reaction, and finally 2 PCR assays, one for pig adenovirus and one Clostridium SPP. The assays were conducted from the same wipe by the ANSES in Ploufragan, based on methods and results, which you can find on the posters during the break. Regarding the results and the discussion, some variation factors were involved regarding the level of contamination. There was a lorry effect, a day effect, and the combination between slaughterhouse and whole-year company, but not necessarily always in the same direction. There seems to be an obvious effect of the site of harvesting the samples. So we categorized the harvesting sites in 3 groups, depending on their level of contamination. We have the clean sites, the outside wall of the lorry, and that makes sense because obviously there is less organic soil outside than inside. Pigs are inside the lorry. The floor is clean. Why? Because it's recent dirt. There is no biofilm or little biofilm, and because usually the floor is better cleaned by the driver. And it's also a horizontal surface, and therefore the disinfectant will remain longer on the floor. We have intermediate sites, the separation walls and the loading ramp. Again, because we're talking about recent soiling, limited biofilm, and these sites are better cleaned by the drivers. And as far as the loading ramp is concerned, it's again a horizontal surface, so the disinfectant will stick. And finally, we have the dirty sites, the lateral walls and the roof of the lorry. Very often the soiling is old, there is a lot of biofilm developing, they are not easily accessible, and less systematically washed by the drivers between every hole, and very often the surfaces are vertical, and therefore the disinfectant will slide and not stick to the wall. Regarding the relationship between the methods, we looked into the correlations, and we found that not all the correlations were significant, and when they were significant, then the coefficients, R coefficients, were rather low. The less correlated methods were the biofilm, as you can see highlighted in red. The ATP method, very limited correlation with the other methods, and finally the contact dishes. The best correlated methods were the two PCRs together with a correlation coefficient. We're very happy because here the correlation coefficient is very good, 0.67, and also the protein residue score, relatively good correlation, at least significant correlation with all the other methods, and the swine adenovirus PCR assay where the correlations were also relatively good. We then calculated for each method on the lorry scale. We made our own calculations, but we didn't get any better correlation. Now, if we want to look at the relationship between the methods, we divided the methods in 4 categories. And if we look at the percentage of clean sites, score 1, they vary a lot according to the method. We, as you can surmise from the graph, we go from 6% of clean sites for PCR, I can't remember which one, to 48%. And for dirty sites, the percentage of dirty sites in red, in scores 3 and 4, the results between the methods are more similar. We range from 30 to 43%. Why is there a different relationship between the methods? Because we're not measuring the same biological phenomenon. In some cases, we're measuring organic matter. In other cases, the biofilm. In other cases, bacteria. And in other cases, viruses. Also because the sampling surfaces were different. We went from 20 square centimeters to 1,200 square centimeters for one swipe, one cloth. And, you know, the contact dish is 20 square centimeters, so we can't harvest on a bigger surface. Also the sampling techniques, because depending on the technique, they will catch more microorganisms or more dirt and soiling. And this is very true on the surfaces where the soil, where the dirt is very dry and it's old. And it's also true when we did side-to-side samplings, because even side to side, the sampling will not be the same. And there may be dirt that is invisible to the eye, but there are still bacteria or viruses left behind, so it's a bad result. And there's also the efficacy of disinfection that may vary, depending on whether the surface is clean or not. There are clean surfaces that are not well disinfected. But contrary to other studies, which we have published previously at Ifip, not on lorries, studies conducted in the breeding farms or in the slaughterhouse, but unfortunately there was no correlation between the contact dish and the visual observation score, and our coefficient is very low between the contact dish and the ATP method. Regarding the discussion, what are the advantages and disadvantages of all the methods? For the visual examination score, the biofilm and the protein score, they only define the cleaning itself. It's interesting because the cleaning is not well done. Obviously, there will be no disinfection. But regarding the sampling techniques, some techniques are simple, easily standardized, the contact dish, the PCR, the visual score, whereas the ATP and the protein score are more difficult to standardize because they're carried out with a little brush. And it's not always that easy to make a sampling with a little brush, and 2 operators will do it in a different way. For the ATP, you have to drop 3 drops and then 4 drops. I mean, it's also relatively cumbersome and not easily done, and that is a downside. And for the biofilm, the preparation is difficult. Reading the result is also very difficult. We have a color scale, it's difficult, it's tedious, and if there is not enough light in the lorry, you don't see well, and you can't use it on all surfaces. For instance, the ceiling is not very easy, or on painted surfaces. The speed of the result, the contact dish and the PCR require 24 hours and they have to be sent to a laboratory, whereas the other methods can give you an immediate result. That can be interesting if there is a sanitary crisis, because it allows the lorry to keep working. The cost isn't 0 for the visual score, the protein residues less than €5. Contact dish and ATP, the cost is €10 approximately, but for the ATP you have to buy the device. And for PCR, it's more than €25 per analysis. Regarding a choice for the control method, that really frustrated us because we ruled out 2 methods immediately, biofilm, because it's not correlated with the other methods and cannot be used everywhere. So that's it. And the SPP Clostridium PCR we ruled out because 97% of the samplings came back positive. So why spend money when you're sure it's going to be positive anyway, in 90% of the cases, 97% of the cases. Some methods can be used. Protein residues and visual score. They give an idea as to whether the lorry was cleaned and cleaned well enough, the quality of the cleaning. The contact dish is a little superior to measuring the ATP. It gives you an idea of the microbial control. And finally, swine adenovirus PCR is a good indicator of efficacy of disinfection targeting viruses, because that was the main goal, and it's shown on the poster. Swine adenovirus is a virus that is always present in all the lorries before you clean the lorry, so it's a very good indicator. In conclusion, I have to quote it. I have to say it, we have not gotten any very good results, unfortunately. No method made us really happy. But what we did show is that contamination varies a lot between the different sites and the 3 groups of sites. So it's absolutely essential that we carry out several samplings. We cannot limit ourselves to 1 per lorry, but there's a cost, and it's also a matter of efficacy. We thought that maybe 5 sites per lorry were a good intermediate solution. Loading ramp, floor, 1 lateral wall in the inside, 1 separation wall, and 1 sealing. And we also thought that cleaning and disinfection should be carried out at several levels. And that is true for all disinfection operations anyway. The first level is to control how the protocol was implemented. And if the protocol was not implemented well, you can stop it there. You don't have to move on. If it's well done, then you can move on to a visual cleanliness control. And then you can move on to a microbial control. And we recommend the contact dish versus the ATP measured method. It's a little superior. And if the first level control is correct, then it might be useful to perform a control to look for viruses. So it allows you to validate alternative disinfection methods to those given by the regulation or in the HACCP process. It's a French regulation which is compulsory for lorry cleaning. I would like to thank all our partners, Sanutran, Sancesco Perl, Eureden and Secopa, and those who funded the project, Région Bretagne and Valorial, for their support, and I thank you for your attention.